there's like an aesthetic working in Melville's work that you get a sense that you don't have to know how to make a movie. If you truly love cinema with all your heart and with enough passion, you can't help but make a good movie. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to know a lens, you know, a 40 and a 50 and a fuck all that shit. Crossing the line, none of that shit's important. If you just truly love cinema with enough passion and you really love it, then you can't help but make a good movie. If there's one thing that I've done that I'm like the proudest of everything, all right, is the fact that people talk about, wow, you've had such success and it's just been so overnight and whatever. Well, whatever success I've got has come after like 8 years of just nothing working out. Yeah, I worked in a video store in Manhattan Beach, California for many years, you know, since I couldn't get anything sold as a writer and couldn't get any money made to direct any films. That was like that store was my one source of artistic expression. You know, buying the right films, recommending the films. You know, I even used to have these little mini film festivals. Every week, what I would do is I would do like a new theme. I did my own little heist film section, and I remember like looking. I'd seen most of these before, but I remember like looking at them all up on the shelf, and I remember thinking to myself, "God, you know, they haven't done a heist film in a long time. I'd like to see one of those again. This is a really cool genre, you know." And so that put the germ in my head, you know. So then later, I wrote one.
Here are your names: Mr. Brown, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink.
Why am I Mr. Pink?
Because you're a faggot, all right?
Take some money, buy film, put it in your refrigerator, and if you're the kind of person that'll make a movie, you know, every time you open up the refrigerator to get some milk, to get some whatever, and you see film looking back on you, you'll make the film.
You'll make the movie.
Am I right?
Give me the argument, the best argument you know, for the power of cinema.
Oh, gosh. You know, one of the things about cinema that I just find very moving, it's why it's my favorite art form, is and there's a lot of things, people have much different aesthetics about what it is that they like about cinema. To me, what gets me is when you go to a movie and you see a certain sequence, and if there's real cinematic power and there's cinematic flair, like there are certain filmmakers out there that you feel were touched by God to make movies. And it'll be a combination of editing and sound, and usually it's like visual images connected with music or something. But when those things work and they really connect, and you know, an example could be the final gunfight sequence in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, like a sequence I can't ever imagine topping. That's like the one sequence I can't ever imagine doing anything that good. It's just like you forget to breathe. You are really transported to a different place, and music doesn't quite do that on its own, and novels don't quite do it, and a painting doesn't quite do it. They do it their way, but in cinema, especially if you're in a theater and you're sharing the experience with a bunch of other people, so it's this mass thing going on. It's just truly, truly thrilling.
September 23rd, 1994, the opening night of the New York Film Festival. It's your movie. It's playing. The shot where she gets hit in the heart with the adrenaline shot.
Yeah.
Someone passes out, is having a seizure. What did you think?
This movie fucking works. I do like the idea that I can do to the audience, laugh, 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 stop laughing, laugh.
I'm interested in playing any part that Quentin writes, really, and that was when we worked together last. That was everybody's feeling. All the actors that were on Reservoir Dogs, we'll come in and do a line if he wants us to, or we'll come in and play a big part. Doesn't matter, but if he wants us, we'll be there.
He thought, you know, John might be really good for this, so he presented it to me, and I read it, and I thought it was one of the best scripts I'd ever read.
You know, John Travolta's one of my favorite actors. I've just been a big fan of his for like a really long time. I think he was great in Saturday Night Fever and Urban Cowboy, and in particularly in Blowout. That's like one of my favorite performances of all time. And I just haven't seen him like used in a movie the way, you know, I thought he should be used, you know, the way I would use him.
Walk out the door, get in the car, go home, jerk off, and that's all you're gonna do.
When you did Travolta, when you brought him in for Pulp Fiction, did you have any sense that you wanted to recreate his career?
There's something, I think, one of the worst things that happens in Hollywood is a very uncreativeness when it comes to casting. And part of that uncreativity, that unartlessness that happens in casting, is you basically have the same names on this list that the studio makes. All right, and it's the same like list of names that are working on the high-profile films. Every once in a while, somebody else gets in there, but it's they usually better be young. They better be a youngster. All right, and I'm not talking about Harrison Ford and Tom Hanks. I'm talking about all the way down to the character actors, the bumbling sheriff, and you know, the corrupt sheriff and his bumbling deputy.
There's a list for all of those kinds of roles.
Yeah, and it's like there's the high-profile character actor, and that's why when you go see Hollywood movies, you see the same big kind of more or less bigger name character actors in 5-6 movies. All right, and what happens is as 5 years goes on, some of them stay on that list, some of them drop off, new people come on. All right, Robert Forster didn't go anywhere. All right, he's been working, but he's way off that list, and he's like doing like straight-to-video movies and stuff. And some of those movies are okay, and some of them are even pretty good, and some of them are horrible. But he's good in all of them. All right, and the thing is, I don't have that list. I have a good memory. I know that Robert Forster's still there, and he's still kicking butt. All right, I know Pam Grier's still there, and she's still kicking butt. I've got a much longer list, and the only thing you need to be on that list is a good actor.
There was a point in my career when I stopped getting work, and I was getting lousy work, and I had 4 kids, 2 ex-wives. I was trying to get the kids through college. I began to worry that this was not going to happen for me. I walk in, as every morning I do. I came out that door, Quentin Tarantino. He's sitting in my seat, and before I can even get to the table, he lifts up a script, he hands it to me, and he says, "Read this, see if you like it." No chasing, no nothing. This guy gave me a gift, the size of which cannot be exaggerated, and that put the career back into motion.
He's a director and writer in demand, right? The biggest stores, the biggest people want him. Right. And he's going to tell me he's going to invest 2 years of his life to write something for me, and I'm going to believe it.
Hey.
And then he tells me again another year later, I'm going to, okay, now this has got to stop. Okay, you know, don't break my little heart.
I actually think if people are like knowing about my movies 30 or 50 years from now, it's going to be because of the characters that I created.
What is it that makes you two sort of perfect cinematic partners?
I used to feel like sort of a fragile person, you know, kind of waif-like, and it's not that I don't feel that way anymore, but it made me feel powerful. To find your own thresholds of endurance and have to push them further, and then think you've met, you know, your set point, your breaking point, a point you won't pass. In this movie, when I would hit those points, I still would be only at 5% of what he needed me to do. I just never knew that I could bear the weight of that. I could have the strength. I could have the energy. I had such reserves of endurance. It kind of makes a lot of other things in life seem so much more manageable. I mean, it made me feel like, wow, I'm made of stronger stuff than I thought.
The most influential piece of film criticism I've ever read of my aesthetic that applied to me. Very young. I remember reading it at Philippe's, that French sandwich place. All right, I had one of Pauline Kael's books, and I'm reading her review of Band of Outsiders, also known as Band Apart, which I named my company after. She's reviewing Godard's movie, and she says, it's as if a couple of movie-crazy young Frenchmen were in a coffee house, all right, and they've taken a banal American crime novel and they're making a movie out of it based not on the novel, but on the poetry that they read between the lines. And when I read that, I was like, that's my aesthetic. That's what I want to do. That is what I want to achieve.
And he actually thinks that you deserve to see it on film. like he did when he was a kid. And I'm sure that there's a generation of kids growing up who watch films digitally who have no idea what he's talking about or why he thinks it's such a big deal. But one of these days when they get to be 40 or so years old and they're beaming movies directly to your fucking head as opposed to you going to the movie to see it, you'll be going, I miss going to the movies.
I was just getting to learn Quentin Tarantino. So he was, again, a tyrant. You know, he was at this, do not fuck my film up.
Tyrant in the sense that does he insist on every word being just the way he wrote it?
But that's what you want.
Do you?
You want a director who, even if you're going off the cliff, you know that you're going off the fucking cliff.
But don't you want the freedom to also kind of add your twist?
Not with him.
No.
The first day of rehearsal, I'm reading my lines like, yeah, and he said, cut. Could I talk to you for a second? Close the door. What the fuck is that? I said, what you mean? I knew I was going to have this problem. Listen, all of this shit, you have to be a fucking slave, okay? He's a slave. He's not cool. He's a fucking slave.
Right.
He doesn't know how to read. You come in with your fucking Louis bag and your fucking Range Rover and your fucking Jess, I'm so fucking, you're not Jim Brown. He's a fucking slave. And then he becomes the hero. But lose that shit. Door swings open, he walks out.
Wow. Would you work with Quentin Tarantino again, or is it just too goddamn...
1,000 times.
Oh, you...
Now, if I'm doing a movie about slavery, I don't mind traumatizing the audience. You should be somewhat traumatized in watching a film about slavery. You need to know what America was like at that time. You need to know what slavery means per se to some people.
I like the way you die, boy.
He has enough problem being vilified himself as a racist because he uses nigger in his scripts that much or puts those kinds of words in a character's mouth. But, you know, I always tell people, I don't understand why they can't look at his work and realize that every character he's ever given me has pretty much been the smartest character in the film, that has the most dignity and respect and kind of runs things and is not a fool of any sort and understands a whole lot about what's going on in life and in the world. And for him to write characters like that for me would be impossible for a racist to do.
Thanks, Quentin.
Hey.
You the man.
Hey, man, you the man. Hey, thank you. I've always believed that I wanted to have a novelist write, to write characters that are however they are. They have to be interesting. They have to be fascinating, but you don't have to like them. Now, actually, in some of the cases, I want to make it actually hard for you to like them, but you like them anyway. And now that's on you now.
When I finished that script, I knew that Colonel Londa was one of the greatest characters I've ever written and one of the greatest characters I will ever write.
I think I was quite rightfully proud of that character. I didn't think I was going to find it. And I called the producers and said, look, if we can't find the right Londa, I'd rather just publish this script and do something else. If we don't find him, I'm pulling the plug on Thursday. And we're just going to publish the script, and that's going to be it.
Tell me where your acting life was when you got this script from Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, you know, for the region, it was satisfyingly okay. For me as a person, it was frustratingly not okay.
One of the things about the character is the fact that he's a linguistic genius. It is just simply one of the aspects about the character. And I knew that whatever actor I cast to play this has to be as much of a linguistic genius as Londa is, or else he would never come off the page. He would be trapped on the page. An actor could do the best job they could have, they could try, but if they just didn't have that in as part of their character, it just wouldn't work.
Well, the thing about language, for example, you know, this guy speaks several languages. Okay, you know, there are a few people in this world who speak several languages. It's
like you.
No, well, it's not such an accomplishment, really. But you know, what does it mean to speak a language, and to what aim and what goals does a person employ the usage of language, and on what level does he communicate? I relearned the enthusiasm and kind of. Yeah, I hesitate to say it, but why should I hesitate? Love for my craft. And that you can learn from Quentin.
I wasn't being cavalier when I said I wouldn't make it. This movie meant everything to me, but there was something, there was also something very liberating about knowing you wanted it exactly the way it had to be, and you would walk away from it rather than make a compromise.
Then the audition. And there, you expect this zany, enfant terrible kind of wild guy.
Yeah, Mr. Tarantino.
Mr. Tarantino. So everything we know about Mr. Tarantino. And you get in the room, and there's this refined gentleman, immensely polite, and asks you to sit down and converses, funnily inspired. And then asks whether you would mind to read. And I thought, are you kidding?
Kill the Nazis!
I can just tell you the day that Christoph came, walked in the room, sat down, and read 2 scenes. I remember thinking, and Lawrence was sitting right next to me, and go, we're making a movie.
Not only that, hands down. Stop for a second, please. The second part is... But hands down.
I love this man.
Yeah.
Whenever Quentin says, here's the thing, you better pay attention because he's about to say something very important. You do a good job, you get a cool, man. You get a really great take, he'll scrunch his forehead and nod, and you get 2 thumbs up. And every once in a while, when you hit that sweet spot, you'll get a genius! I never got that. Christoph did. And as for the depth of his work, like the tavern scene in Bastards, for example, you would find that the German movie star and double agent Bridget von Hammersmark is based on a real-life Third Reich star, Zara Ledner, who was reportedly a spy for England. The clandestine meeting takes place in the tavern La Louisiane. It's named after a 2-star Parisian hotel where Quentin wrote Pulp Fiction. The characters are forced to play a game that tests one's knowledge of pop culture, history, and more specifically, cinema. The game references an Apache Indian, a Polish film star, and King Kong, which all leads to a discussion about American slavery. And it's beneath this level we find the gist of the scene, covertly reminding the audience that other nations also carry shame and pain from their own atrocities. In true Quentinese, I would say, that's a bad move.
I must say, damn good stuff, sir.
And if you've happened to have forgotten what you loved about movies in the first place, I tell you, you will only have to spend one night with Quentin. Well, not in that way, I mean like an evening with Quentin.
Yeah, I said that to Quentin on the 3rd day. I remember exactly up there in the hills next to the farmhouse, and I said, and I'm grateful that you remind me of the reason why I have become an actor.
There is this element that is alluded to that's absolutely true, and there's a certain pride that goes with it, and there's a certain sense of isolation that goes with it. Orson Welles had his Mercury players, and to be able to sort of be in a category like that with Tarantino, that's not an untrue feeling that you have when you're working, and in years to come, you have the feeling that his movies will be studied. They'll look at them and we were just talking about it today in group. There was one fellow that was putting it in a term that Quentin talked about in groups of 3s. And the fact that you were involved with that on a very important level, I think what you allude to sometimes with a question like that is that is there. That's not lost on us.
Cool, let's just do it one more time. Let's go. Why? Because